Good night, Teddy.
Okay. A second here. All right.
If you guys can hear my kids arguing in the background, I apologize. They can be assholes.
Let me stop the music there. Okie doke. So I know you guys could see me the whole time, but now everybody can see me and they can all hear all of you now. Of course, the first thing that happens is a freaking bot posts on my Kick chat, which I'm going to get rid of real quick because that message will just stay there, which is awesome. But anyway, yeah, I heard you guys introducing yourselves. For my stream that didn't hear that yet, honestly, if you've ever seen any of these streams, you know who at least two of these people are. Redbeard above me, Captain Redbeard TTV. You only stream Hunt right now, or are you planning on streaming other stuff, right?
I might stream other stuff. I don't know. I just all depends on how I feel. So
But
I just
right
at
now,
least want to
just
be out
Hunt.
and yeah.
And then to my, I don't know if it's my left or right because I can't remember if the stream mirrors it. I think it's to my, if you're looking at the screen, it's to my right. Is broke his phone on Twitch. Same thing, primarily a Hunt streamer, although he's been playing, the hell is it? The Card Shop Simulator, right? You got into that
BCG
hard.
Shop Simulator?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're loving that.
that's fun.
I don't even know how to ban that bot. Whatever, the message is gone. Either way. And then above broke is a scary girl, his wife, who you said you were a speedrunner for, was it Resident Evil, right?
Yeah, Resident Evil.
And then you're just like on a streaming hiatus temporarily now.
Yeah, at least for a while. I don't know how long it's gonna be. Maybe permanent. I don't know.
Well, either way, um, yeah, primarily was Dead by Daylight before, right? Scary games, either way, mostly. It seemed like
Yeah, horror games. Yeah.
good stuff. All right, so yeah, that's everybody. Our This is a new format for saltyCAST. We haven't done one of these in years. The first ones are just kind of like, let's see how it goes, and I think the first one ran like 4 hours. We're not doing that anymore because that's crazy. And while I have watched that episode and the older episodes many times, that's a long time to talk about anything. So we're planning like 45 minutes, an hour format here. Um, Primarily single topic, which is the state of gaming in 2024. Not just AAA, but indie, but gaming in general. Uh, and I put out a survey to my Discord server. I put it on Twitter. I put it um, everywhere I could, and then you guys put it out as well, right? I know Redbeard was pushing it.
Yep, I put it out through a few places. Those of you follow me is in the baddies. It was in there. Phantom Troops.
My
It was in
parent.
there. House of Horrors. It was in there.
Nice. So we got a lot of response. Well, we got 10, but I mean, that's honestly, I only thought I would get like 4 or 5. But anyway, it gives us enough of a sample size to give us a good picture about like
Oh, thanks, Fanny.
where
Go ahead.
people feel like they're, kind of landing on some of these topics. The vast majority of people were in the 30 to 34 range, which is not vast majority, I guess 60%, but that's our pretty much that's our age range, sort of, or at least our target audience age range. I don't think any of us are looking to, while I'm sure we bring in there's audiences of kids on Twitch especially, and then Kick and YouTube as well. None of us are 17, 18 years old, so we're pulling in audience. Typically people, I think, like to watch somebody that's their same relative age play the games that they play. So that would be where our audience draw is. So it makes sense that most of the people are in that age range. But I guess let's start with, if we want to go around and just like kind of freewheel it to where you think AAA studio, like major studio games, like have they hit the mark in 2024, you think, for their audiences? And if or haven't they? And if they haven't, or if they have, why? Like what do you support that with? And then we'll just go from there.
I honestly don't think any in my opinion, I don't think anything really has changed over the last like 20, 30 years that I've been playing video games, 20 years, I guess. Um I think like because all the triple A's were always chasing like at whatever is like the big selling point. Like Halo came out, and all the games that came out after Halo were replicating that sort of thing that Halo had for a few years. And so like nowadays, when Elden Ring was a massive hit, and so obviously all the Soul-like games started doing re-releases, started doing new Soul-like games started coming out. It's just like they chase whatever is like current. And so when like I look at it as like usually we get one good AAA release usually a year, and then most of the games the next year are sort of based off of that AAA release. Like I feel like games get sort of like built off of whatever the big win the year before was.
That's fair. Like whoever took game of the year, or like, I know Game of the Year is, I think it's split now into multiple categories for a lot of different things, but like in general, based on sales
I don't
alone, I
think
feel
it's
like
game of the
companies
year.
look at that.
Yeah, I think it's profit. I think they look at like, okay, because like you look at remember Fortnite when Fortnite was really really big. That like a lot of companies realize, oh my god, I can make money off of skins. And this is when Fortnite like back in the day. I'm talking like almost a decade ago, and because like companies weren't going crazy with skins back then. And then Fortnite was like, yeah, no, we have all of these skins. And then all these companies were like, oh my gosh, I can just make more money with my online game by just selling people a different looking gear and stuff. And now you cannot buy a multiplayer game nowadays without skins in it. There's not you show like it's if it's a multiplayer game, they're gonna have skins in it.
They're putting skins in single player games.
Yeah.
There was shoot, it's one of the Assassin's Creed games, or is it Origins, I think, that's single player, and there is purchasable skins and upgradable like like outfits and stuff like that for a single player. Like, who the hell are you showing? Like, I get it when you're buying one for a multiplayer game, like, okay, hey, look at this cool guy that I got, or look at this piece of gear that I have, or you know what I mean? Look at how neat this is, so that you have something to like show other people. But if you're not showing anybody and it's just for you, I mean, I get it. You want something nice to look at, but like that's an amazing stretch that they're really and obviously it's sold because I don't think they're the only ones that are doing it.
I mean, that's one thing. Well, I'll get to that later. Go ahead.
No, I mean, no,
Uh,
go for it. Where do you
I just
where do you feel what same kind of question, like where do you feel that are they hitting the mark, you think? Like how is 2024 looking for games, or even
I,
2023 if you
for,
want to look at the whole year?
for me, I play different games. There's a reason why I play Hunt. I play Hunt for. I don't like the constant builds. I don't like the go in bare naked, as per se, with minimum and upgrade as you go. I'd rather go in, build our guy, go play the game. If we win, great. We lose, I'm out, and then we start over. Like Fortnite and that stuff for me, that it hurts my head. I can't process and want to do all that stuff.
So
But
you're talking about gameplay alone of Fortnite, you're right? The building
yeah,
and yeah.
And that stuff. And so as far as games being built out, I don't know. I don't really branch out because of it.
So do you think, I mean, of the other games that have been, released and stuff, right? Like, I mean, you've at least paid
For the
attention to
most
them.
part, I pay
Right. So,
attention to them, but
right. So do you think that are we moving in a direction that is,
they're literally in my opinion, they're making the same games with different characters.
just a new skin on them?
Yeah, that's it.
Slap a different color scheme on it.
I mean, you look at all the as it goes, whatever. You start out Tom Clancy right to begin with. That was great. Well, is the new Tom Clancy's any different than when they started? Really? Other
Yeah,
than
because
new skins?
especially yeah, no, that I
Yeah.
think that especially with Tom Clancy, they are stuff like that. They're scared to go too far away from what is working because what
Mm-hmm.
Rainbow Six Siege has been out for years,
Right.
and so like they have to make something that's close enough that everyone else who still plays it will like, oh yeah, this is good, and so they can't take too many risks.
No, they can't. But it's the same every year when they've put out new ones. It's essentially the same thing with different skins. They may put a new map on it. That's about it.
Well, I think there's a fine line between, because at any given time, right, these are revolving doors. The perfect example is Rainbow Six, right? It's been out for years, and you have an established player base. There are a, not to say a finite number, but you have a core player base of people that have loved that game since it came out and continue to play it, like we do with Hunt, right? We're not going anywhere. Like, and honestly, we got lots of reasons too, because they make mistakes, they change things that didn't need to be changed, and then can they retain that core player base? But then from a business standpoint, I think a lot of these companies are thinking, not just about their core player base, because there's a set amount of money, skins aside, and little, microtransactions here and there, that we're going to put into it, right? We've already bought the game. We own the game. We play the game regularly. Those numbers are important to them, but they also need a constant flow of new players to pick the game up. So there's a balancing act between new player onboarding and old player keeping interested, right? So like World of Warcraft, really good example. I don't think any of us play it. I played a long time ago, but it's been, how long's World? It's like 30 fucking years that this game has been out. And they continuously release, expansions and everything else. But can they release something that is interesting and different enough to a new player base to bring somebody in that's never played before, while continuing to keep the game interesting for somebody that's been max level since forever, and add new end game content for them to keep going too, right?
Well,
And
Lydia this is perfect for Lydia, because Resident Evil is like, they're doing this currently. They have so many games already released, and they're just slowly re-releasing every single game that they released years ago. I mean, it works and people pay full price for these games when they come out.
Well, we don't know if the next game is going to be a completely new game or a remake, but I do think that they probably will remake all of the old games eventually, or at least most of the main titles. But I think the reason, I mean, the main reasoning for like the re-releasing is like with those games is to appeal to a more modern gaming audience as far as gameplay is concerned, because most people nowadays playing games are not going to want to play a game with fixed camera angles. And even the original Resident Evil 4 didn't have fixed camera angles, but it did have a bit clunky controls and stuff. So, but it's interesting as far as Resident Evil is concerned. Like, people will buy the games no matter what, but they will be critical, if like highly critical, if they feel like the game wasn't done well enough. Like, for example, the reaction that people had to the Resident Evil 3 remake, because they cut a lot of things from the original game, versus the Resident Evil 4 remake, which they didn't like copy it 100%, but they didn't really cut they cut a couple things, but in my opinion, I think the things that they cut weren't that great to begin with. It was like a reimagining, but it didn't feel rushed. It felt like they really put their time into it. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what Capcom does with future releases, if they go on a route of making more original releases or more remakes.
so that's what I was going to
It's-
ask too, because I haven't followed. I've never been super into the Resident Evil games. When you say remake, are they? Have they all been like that? I think you used the word reimagining. Has it been like that? I know they did that with Final Fantasy VII, right? Where there was a remake initially that was just, let's update the graphics, let's make the gameplay and everything the same, and then they did integrate or whatever, where it was like, and in the same story, the same characters, but they've changed some core mechanics of the game, the way it played and everything else. It wasn't turn-based anymore and all this other stuff. Like, is that what they're doing with all of them, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
Yeah, really the latter, what you said, like same characters, same story, but just updating the gameplay, just having a modern over the shoulder perspective instead of a fixed camera angle. And people are going to have different opinions. Some people, especially people who are very nostalgic for the original games, they don't like the remakes as much because they feel like it's not as good, but I think it just really depends on personal preference. I personally prefer playing the remakes, but they did do something similar to what you like, where it's basically just uh not changing much at all, like just updating the graphics with the Resident Evil 1 remake from I believe it was 2001. And there were a few significant changes, but as far as the core gameplay mechanics are concerned, they still kept the fixed camera angles and everything. Um, and a lot of Resident Evil fans kind of consider Resident Evil 1 remake to be like the gold standard for remakes because they really didn't change much. But I think nowadays it's like when we release a game, especially a AAA game that's gonna cost $60, people are gonna expect that it has modern gameplay mechanics. I don't. I think outside of a fairly niche audience, a game with fixed camera angles isn't gonna sell very well. But the people who do like it will really like it.
Well, so do you think, and this is kind of for everybody too, not just about Resident Evil, do you think that the when they update these games, because I know that it's common and probably in that game as well, and I know a lot of other games upon initial release, some of these games that we love and people look back on nowadays and they're like, man, what a great game that was. They didn't do that well on release. There's been a lot of games throughout the years that have done horrible and most people hated, and then you look back years later and it builds a following, a cult following or whatever, and then it becomes this classic that it wasn't initially. It happens with movies all the time, I know, and there's been a lot of games that have been in that situation where they're not they're not like considered great games until way later. And so do you think that by not changing the core gameplay mechanics or not like drastically updating some of the stuff that like kind of cuts their Achilles heel, right? Like where if you just reskin it and update the graphics, does it kind of remind people, oh, this wasn't that great a game? Like, cause looking back, you know what I mean? Like, nostalgia is very powerful for a lot of games, I know. And so like a lot of stuff that gets released nowadays, people look back and go, boy, I wish, remember the first time you played this or the first time you played that. And it's so much more fondly looked upon backwards. But if you re-release it, even with updated graphics, but it's the same, you're like, oh, this does kind of suck. Like, but do you lose that core audience that did love it the way that it came out? And so like do you think that which way is safer to go, at least from these companies' standpoint, maybe?
I think it depends on what you consider to be a core audience. Um, I think there, at least this, I don't know that much. I don't know about other games, but I think at least as far as Resident Evil, there's kind of a couple of different core audiences, and there's the nostalgic people. And a lot of the nostalgic people also really love the remakes as well. But then there's the newer fans, which I would say is a lot more people because, the original games were released in the 90s or in the early 2000s. So, a lot of people who are in their, 20s or whatever, like kind of like the target gaming age, I suppose, um were babies or not born yet when the
Right.
when the original games were released. So yeah, I guess it depends on what you see as a core audience. And there's a lot of division, which I think is personally, I think is stupid. I think it's it's like, what, people argue until they're blue in the face about like whether the original was as good, like the remake of the original was better, and it's like, I who fucking cares? Like, it's some people are gonna like different things, but I think as far as money and is concerned, I think the studios need to cater to the the newer people, like, as just like I said, as far as money making, because the nostalgia people are a smaller group.
Right. So the current game, they should be targeting the current gaming climate if they want financial success out of it.
I think the current gaming climate, it's like it's in my opinion, it's pretty obvious. Like AAA studios don't take risk anymore. What they do is they just replicate something that's good, and so they let indie games come out and take the risk. And then when an indie game comes out with something that is No Man's Sky that is good, they replicate that Starfield and they take
Power
a risk.
World.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And like, you know, so I guarantee let's just what would you say is like the top indie game this year right now? Like I'm just gonna Google it. Top indie game.
I think Power World is like on fire.
Yeah, Power World's on there. Yeah, so like I would imagine something like Power World is gonna come out next year, AAA wise, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, it's just Power World, blah blah," and it might flop, but it might also go the opposite. But like what they do is they see dollar signs where it's like, "Oh, this indie company was able to create something cheap. We can make a big investment, do the same thing, and maybe at least get something out of it." Like what was that big failure that just happened? Concord?
Oh yeah, no, that's a disaster.
Yeah, and they fucking what was it? It's isn't it? It's like Overwatch clone or something. It's just like another clone of something that was a safe bet, and they just fucked it because they thought, you know, they're just trying to do safe bets. They're not trying to do anything new. There's like nothing new about that game.
It was like $500,000 too that they just straight up said that they were, and they're shutting the servers down. It's done. It's
Yeah.
dead.
And they considered that a safe bet. And on paper, I would say it was a safe bet, but also on paper, I think that genre is way too overfleshed now. I think there's just too much shit in that genre.
Well, and it's difficult to replicate the success of something else that still exists. So to go, okay, well, we can make that, and people, you're trying to split the core audience that enjoys because Overwatch isn't gone, right? Like it's Overwatch 2 now or whatever.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't the whole thing. Is Overwatch 2 was just essentially Overwatch because
I
they
mean,
didn't want
yeah.
to fuck it up,
Right. It was just an update. But the point is you can still play it. Like it's still live. The servers are still up. So, and people still do play it. So now you're competing. Yeah, exactly. So you're competing for an audience that already has something to do or watch or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you're fighting for an audience that's pre-existing. It's different if you're trying to replicate the success of something that was successful, but now due to age or just, you know, the company going under or something like that, like it's no longer around because it died and the servers are dead. Well, okay, years later, hey, we can replicate that success, do the same thing that they did, make it a little bit better, maybe tweak it, update the graphics, things like that, bring that back live. And those people who love that and look back on it, not just nostalgia wise, but like are, you know, something is missing or you're filling a hole. If the hole is already filled, you're just trying to shove more stuff in to get their attention. And if it's not any better and it doesn't add anything that's that critical that they were missing, they're not going to move. And they didn't. People voted with their wallets and the game failed, and it was a massive failure. But so Power World, because it got brought up, do you think you're all aware of what Nintendo's the thing that's happening with that? Just briefly, there is a patent that got filed by Nintendo because when Power World came out, it's a very obvious, if you don't know what it is, it's a very obvious clone of Pokemon from the catching and leveling of monsters standpoint. Some of the Pokemon are actually kind of one for one, or the pals in Power World. But they've added a bunch of other things that Pokemon doesn't have. I believe there's like guns and a bunch of other, you know, it's in a more adult, modern day audience kind of game, less family oriented. And it targets an audience that I think people grew up playing Pokemon in that kind of a game. And they're bored with that now. It's not interesting to them because they do play games that are, have mature themes and everything else, and they would rather play something that's more along that line. So it very much filled a niche that was looking for something to play. Well, Nintendo, when everybody thought they were going to file a copyright takedown and say, hey, you basically copied our game, you can't do that. They didn't do that. What they did was they filed a patent for gameplay mechanics for like throwing a ball to catch a monster and certain different things after Power World has already been released. They filed for these patents in Japan. If they I don't know if they got them yet or not, but if they get them, their intent is to then shut down Power World because they have the patent that they're in infringement on, and then destroy the game that way. But I mean, what do you think about that? Like that's obviously not in the interest of the consumer. It's not a shock that Nintendo's trying to stop them because, again, it was kind of an obvious copy in a lot of aspects. But the way that they're going about it is a very dangerous precedent, because if that goes through, then essentially what you can do as a gaming company or as game developer is file patents for gameplay mechanics and then prevent any other game from having those gameplay mechanics because they're infringing on a patent, not copyright, which is entirely different. And
Yeah, I think the
very
way they're going
scary.
about it is weird. I
It's
think
terrifying.
but I think the other side of the coin, to play devil's advocate, is the vast majority of people, when Power World came out, were simply waiting for Nintendo to do something. Everyone was like, all right, it's so close, they're gotta do something. So that's why I don't think anyone would be surprised or is surprised with Nintendo's move. Like it's a stupid move, and I hope it doesn't go through because it creates a weird precedence. Because then you can be like, okay, well, my characters fire a gun a certain way in this game, so like no one can fire a gun this way in any other game, you know?
Right. But like there's another example of this too with and I can't remember what the game is right now, but I saw videos where they talked about it, where there's another gameplay mechanic that one of these devs filed for that prevented again, this is along the same lines. They were filing a patent copyright or a patent for a gameplay mechanic that they can then say, okay, well, no one else can do this in their game because we own that. Well, again, if you're setting that precedent, you're drawing the line and saying, okay, well, now you can't, play an arena game where you're running around with a firearm and shooting at other people because we own the patent on that. That completely stops development on so many types of games. That's a very broad idea, but I'm just trying to like get the concept forth. Like that, the danger to gaming itself, if that becomes the precedent, if that's what happens and they get away with that, is absolutely catastrophic to the end user, I think. It's very financially successful for am I still connected? Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
having a huge major internet hiccup there. My OBS went red and everything else. Anyways, sorry. I think it's back now. That if they do that and that's successful, like I said, you're talking about stopping. You said it before, the indie developers, right? That they can take the risks that AAA studios don't want to put the budget for to take a risk on a new gameplay mechanic or a new style. And if that's successful, then that AAA can go copy that. I'm not aware of any indie studio going after a AAA game developer for stealing a gameplay mechanic or something that they came up with.
Well, they can't. It's
Because
not like they're gonna ever have money for it.
right, well, it's not worth the fight for them, but it's also, I think the spirit of an indie developer, at least the ones that I play their games, is that they're moving gaming as a whole in the right direction. Like they're pushing them forward. And so in pushing them forward, they're okay with setting a new idea forth that then AAA studios are copying because it's better for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, if that's what's happening, I don't feel like any of these indie developers are okay with that because they are less worried. While everybody's a business, and I get it, they're worried about their bottom line. They're not. They don't have 10,000 employees. They're not worried about salaries of CEOs and everything else that have never played a video game in their life. They're not doing all. They don't have health insurance for all their employees and everything. Some of these indie developers are like 4 dudes in a garage. So they care more about this, the spirit of gaming itself, the enjoyment that their users get out of it. I mean, a good example is what happened to Among Us, right? That game was, I don't know how small their team was, but it was very small, like 10 people or less. And they made that thing. It didn't do very well. Nobody played it for like 6 months. And then a couple of streamers picked it up. It exploded. The entire world started playing it. They got tons of money influx. They tried to grow as a company. They could not come up with anything new. And I'm pretty sure they just died off. Like, I think the game is still around, but I don't think they have anything, like, nothing changed. There was like a VR version that got released and everything else, but like they haven't done anything interesting in that space since then. And it just kind of like faded into the shadows.
Yeah. I mean
You-
that's I think go ahead, Redbird.
I've actually even played Among Us. I used to play with my kids all the time.
Right.
You were
So,
talking about that. So something like that was brought up. This guy even picked it up because my kids were playing it, and it was one I could play with my kids because it was just. You remember me talking a while ago? I talked about stupid games you can play without thinking. That was one of them for me. I run around and you just pay attention, whatever. That was it.
Right, because it was
But
more of a
go ahead.
social game. The gameplay itself
Yep.
was very simple.
Yep.
And I think you can call it as, it exploded at a time because it was like right before COVID, right? Like it did
Not like
well.
that.
It did well because of the current state of the world, and people were kind of locked inside. And it was like a whole thing where people were craving, again, like I said before, it was like filling a hole. There was a missing aspect. People were looking for a social connection. They were looking for the ability to not just play online with their friends, but to like have full conversations and like make it a whole thing. Cause that's what most of that game is. And they met that niche perfectly, filled that hole, and worldwide success. But as soon as they grew to the size of a company, you know what I mean? Like that, all that money, and they got new employees and everything else, your priorities have to change, which again is fair. But is that what's the Batman quote? You either it's from the Joker said it, right? You either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the enemy.
Yep.
So I feel like for some of the indie developers, it's got to be their goal, right? It's some of them at least that, okay, we want to be a success. We want to, make a game that everybody plays, grow, and all make a bunch of money, and everybody goes home happy. And then we grow and just continue to grow. Well, eventually you're going to become your arch nemesis, which is this AAA development studio. If everything goes perfectly, you're going to end up there. And is it worth is that where you want to go? Like, because I don't feel like any of those companies that make these games, granted, there's a lot of AAA games out there that I've played that I really enjoyed that are, like amazing works of art. Red Dead Redemption 2, fantastic game, like goes down in history as one of the best games of all time. Huge studio behind that, voice actors and equipment and everything else, like the amount of money that goes into and still continues to go, because there's a multiplayer aspect which I really mess with, but that do you think that it is, if you were a AAA or sorry, if you were an indie game developer, do you think that you would want that to be your goal, to become the AAA studio, like with the mindset maybe, oh, well, we'll make the change from the inside. Like once we are the enemy, we'll be different, right? Or it's just like before a president becomes president, like running for president, they're all about like, we're going to change this, we're going to change that. And then they get in the office and they don't really change that much because they realize once they're in the office, there's not that much that they can do to change that much. They just become part of the status quo that was already there. And do you think that, like, is it worth, would you want to be the financial success, or would you be happy with just doing well enough, living comfortably, enjoying what you do, and making games that people want to play? Like, you wish for success but not too much success, you know what I mean?
Well, sometimes also the smaller studios, they'll be acquired by a larger studio. So they can kind of have it doesn't always work this way, but like, they can kind of work on their own thing, but also have the backing of a larger company. But in that case, then you open yourself up to a larger company having a say in what you're doing. But I'm sure there probably are, plenty of indie studios that would like to be acquired by a larger company. Um, Kind of like how a lot of startups, that's the goal for a lot of startups. They're like, oh, I want Microsoft or Google to buy my company just so I can make a shit ton of money.
But isn't there a lot of
Isn't that
situations where they're acquired and then all terminated?
Yeah,
it,
that's
it
the
is
problem.
isn't that the ending goal in anything, whether it be games, work, anything across the board? Everybody wants to create something, and if they can't make it big, hope to God someone bigger buys them out and carries on with it, even if it is to buy it out and end it.
Yeah, just crush the competition. I mean,
You
and it
know,
does happen, right? The
it
big
does.
studios, they buy them and then they shut them down so that they're not in competition with them. I mean, what happened with Dark and Darker, right? That's still ongoing, isn't it?
Oh no, they're on Steam now and everything.
Right. Well, I think the litigation is still like in the air, isn't it?
I have no clue. I just know that they're on Steam fully. It's a game.
Well, because I
There's a
know.
game that came out that's a clone of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's literally like a clone of it, a free game. And it does like the things that Dark and Darker doesn't do. Dark and Darker is slow and methodical, whereas the free one just makes it faster. Everything's just a little bit faster.
So, but is so y'all. I mean, do you think that's always the end goal? Then, I mean, I know that like
No,
for
I don't
these
think it's the end.
massive.
I think if an indie studio, I think an indie studio can be pretty apparent what their end goals are by like the games they start releasing. Like, if an indie game releases like a game that has like a good amount of success, and then they decide to release like a DLC like a year later and stuff. Okay, that obviously they're not like a money hungry. They enjoy the game. They're passionate. But if I see like a indie studio release a game, it has success, and then they release like a bunch of skins for the game and DLCs within just like the game's still just new, and they're like they're basically just they immediately start going into the financial milking of it. That's when I'm like, this is an indie
Microtransactions.
studio. Yeah, this is an indie studio that, given the second to sell to a AAA, will. And so it's just like, okay, I think most of us look at games like that nowadays too. You can sort of see how the developer is with how they react to fame.
Right, because it becomes like a toxic poison, I feel like, that creeps in. But I mean, like even as a small company, I mean, it's a business. It is what it is. I mean, there's passion projects, and some of the biggest indie games are listed as Stardew Valley. It's on the survey. Stardew Valley, Hades, and For the King. All of those, if you look those up, are passion projects that then became something else. Actually, I didn't list it because it's not technically an indie game anymore, but Minecraft is a prime example of this. Mojang, this was a small indie developer that made Minecraft. That concept was so interesting and attracted such an audience. It's because it was so simple, but there was complicated aspects to it that they were bought by fucking Microsoft. And now it's not going anywhere, and it still very much has millions of players, but that does it kind of take the soul out of it to put it in the hands of a big company, or to keep it in the hands of the company that started small and grew, to then, when you have 200 employees or 500 employees or 1,000 or 10,000 employees, there's a response. There's a fiduciary responsibility, right? Where, I think that's the right word, where they have to, especially when they're publicly traded, they have stockholders, and they have they have these numbers that those people care about, that those people go into those meetings, and that's when these companies are hiring CEOs that are wearing a suit and that don't play video games and have never played video games, some of them, and they could give two shits about how the game plays and barely know anything about it. What they care about is, what is the bottom dollar? Why haven't we made what we made last month? Why did our growth slow? Why did the not as many people buy the skins this time? What did you do differently? You know what I mean? And then that's when they look to like start terminating people and everything else, and it becomes this monster that isn't about, it's not consumer focused. It's not again, primarily consumer focused. In a perfect world, they'd be giving these games away for free, and we would all just have a great time together. It's fine to make money. That's not a problem. You're a business. I get it. It costs time and money to develop games. You have to pay teams to test them. You have to pay people to program this stuff. But do you have to milk your player base for everything it's worth? And where is the turning point, do you think, for when it becomes, all right, we're not getting anybody new, let's milk every dollar out of the player base that we have, and then when it dies, it dies?
I think a lot of games. I think that's just like a lot of games end up either doing that, or like most people who are playing a game can sort of sense when a game, like a developer, has given up on a game. So like, I think it's like, I can't think of a game off the top of my head that's done that recently, but like it's it's like, I guess it's not the same thing, but it's like what TikTok is doing right now. TikTok is, the whole algorithm thing between the United States and whatnot. Like, apparently, hey, I don't even use TikTok, but I know that so many people complain about it. Apparently, since that thing has been going on, TikTok has been like super pushing ads, like 10 times like what they used to. And yeah, obviously, because they're scared that their cash cow is going to go away, so they're trying to milk as much as they can before it goes away. It's, and I think any a AAA big company does that.
Oh, that goes in anything though. You build a big company that goes out there. Guess what? You just put yourself at the top of the totem pole. Somebody wants to take your feet out from underneath you. Yeah. You got to do something to stay on top. If that means you've got to do, if you only got so much to give, you milk out what you got to make the best of it. I mean, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. I don't know. Never mind.
When it comes to game, I get it, because the thing is, when it comes to games, that's why so many people like indie games, is because you can sort of expect the assumption is that, let's just say 80% of the time, generally, they're not going to do that. Where with AAA, it's the opposite. You can assume 80% of the time they're trying to just milk anything from you. Just the assumption of the AAA game. Like, like a game that surprised me that was AAA. It was Witcher 3. Witcher 3 came out. They didn't even release a DLC for it for like a year and a half. It was an amazing game. It came out very good. I loved it. AAA game. That was in the 20% though. But see what happens with indie games is like if you know an indie developer that you trust, when they release a game, you sort of just you can like Hunt. I didn't know you know this. It's an indie game. Hunt came out as an indie game, and it is a very well established game now. Like well enough that like my coworker, when I mentioned I play Hunt, he's like, "Didn't that game just get released a few weeks ago?" And I'm like, "No, it didn't." He has a PlayStation, so like.
Well, it's like they changed so much in this update that they branded it almost that they changed the title and everything else. And that was, I think, from a marketing standpoint, probably a smart decision because it almost came out as a re-release. It was like Hunt 2.0, you know, they went for an entirely, they carried over the player base it currently had, and they attempted to bring back people that had left. And they tried to bring in new people with, hey, look at this new shiny thing that we have now. It's different than before. If you've heard of it before, don't worry about that. Worry about this. This is new. Come here and play this.
That's like, what was it? They put a big thing out. They got a guy from, what was it, Call of Duty? He did a lot of Call of Duty shit or whatever it was. And instantly for me, when I heard that, I was like, oh God, there's a reason why I don't play Call of Duty. Don't have that stuff come here. You know what I mean?
Right. Don't bring, because Hunt before was messy, right? Like I almost,
to an extent.
I mean, graphically it's nice. It's very pretty now. I get it. I'm not against that. I buy, you know, expensive computer parts because I like high end gaming. It is very entertaining for me. However, there was a certain level of, I guess the best word is grittiness to Hunt the way it used to be that was almost like it wasn't intentional, I guess not, but but I enjoyed it the way it was because it was off the beaten path, right? You said, don't bring that Call of Duty crap into here. Exactly. It wasn't Call of Duty, which is a selling, at least for me, a selling point to play it because I don't want to play the thing that 10 million other people are playing. One, because I don't have, and looking at the survey, not a lot of people that took it have the time either to dedicate as much to gaming. So a game like Fortnite, if I tried to play that, which doesn't interest me, but if I tried to play, there are people who live, die, and breathe on Fortnite. And so the skill gap between myself, somebody who doesn't have many hours a week to game at all, and somebody that's playing it 24/7 for the entire week, this is zero chance. Like, I don't even know what kind of matchmaking skill system they have, if they have one at all, but like, that is bottom of the bottom. Like, there's no way, right? Like, I'm not going to enjoy myself because I'm going to get just like curb stomped by every single person that's playing that game all the time. And granted, we run into that with Hunt. There are people that are putting in more time and just natural skill levels higher probably too. But I feel like the skill gap, at least for Hunt and the gameplay mechanics that are in that game, is a little more achievable because it's not that complex a game. Yes, there's a lot to it, but like, it isn't, because they haven't added all the crap that Call of Duty has, and because it's not Fortnite and because it's not these other games, it doesn't have 10 million things that you're doing at the same time. It is a simple goal. 12 players max per map, which changes it significantly. Imagine if we had a Hunt game with like 50 people in the map, there's no way
that would be straight up chaos.
Right. Well, it wouldn't, even if you increase the size of the map to accommodate that. The gameplay itself is simple enough that it would just be absolute chaos all the time, and it wouldn't be enjoyable. The way that the game plays now is built for smaller sample sizes. It's built for The grittiness of it, like I said, and the graphics played a part in that, I think, with this change a little bit. But I liked, personally, I like the the road less traveled in a lot of games. I'm not the first guy to run out and buy, like, I own a lot of AAA games now, but I didn't buy them when they came out because, first of all, I can't $60, man, for every game at least. Um I don't want to be a day one player. It's going to be around. I'll play Spider-Man a year or two after it comes out when I catch it on sale. And that's what I did. I mean, I own the game, Red Dead Redemption. I didn't buy that till years after it was out. It came out in like 2014 or something, 2015. I didn't buy it till a couple of years ago because price for one, but also, like, I don't need to be where the rest of everybody is. Once it quiets down and the people that are dedicated have moved on to something else, that's my time to slide in, and you know what I mean, like, to enjoy it and stick around with the core player base that I feel like I have a shot, at least, at being competitive, rather than people that are like, if there was an esport that encompassed Hunt. I don't think there is. Like, they don't have a Hunt Pro League. But if they did, I feel like that would detract from my gameplay experience, because you would have more of these dedicated diehard people who live and die. We've talked about it a lot. If I ever hit 6-star or whatever, which I don't think I would, but if I just all of a sudden overnight was 6-star MMR, that's an entirely different game, and I wouldn't want to play anymore. All right, so I wanted to go over a couple of these before we wrap up. A big one, if you guys are looking at these answers, do you feel the games out today in the last 5 years cater to you as a gamer, i.e., are you able to enjoy them fully? Half of the people that took this survey said maybe. Which I thought long and hard about putting just yes or no on that. But to me, that maybe is almost a no. Like, I could have put a 1 to 10 scale, and I feel like there would have been a lot of threes. Why? I mean, what did you answer, and why do you feel that way, I guess, is a good question. Like, do you think that they're targeted at you, and are you able to enjoy them fully? And if you aren't, like I said, all these maybes, and 2 people said no. I'm pretty sure I said no. Why?
Didn't realize I was muted.
But-
Oh, I was gonna say, I thought you were talking, and I was about to ask.
I honestly, I think I'm pretty sure I answered like maybe, because, like, for me it's like I don't think there's a difference. I think it honestly is like I've just grown. I've gotten older. Like, I used to play a lot different games 10 years ago than I play now. Like, I was addicted to League of Legends, StarCraft 2, like, obsessed with those games. And, like, I don't even touch those type of games because I know how it makes me more angry just to play those games. I don't play games to be angry. I try to relax. And so, like, uh I honestly, I just think I have grown, and I just think that, like we said, they just keep doing the same thing. Whereas AAA games are going to chase after what was popular last year, whoever made something a big wave last year, and they're going to replicate that, or just make the new Call of Duty.
Do you think that there is a type of game or a genre of game that is targeting your age range audience? And do you think you're going to eventually reach a tipping? Do you think you'll grow out of it entirely?
Oh, and like, not hardcore shooters, but like realism shooters, like Hell Let Loose. Like, those are targeted towards older people. It's games that it's literally it's a complete opposite of Call of Duty. It's like you're just in war with people. You have a squad, and it's a very just communication oriented game. And it's a game where you lay in grass, you crawl forward for like 3 minutes, and you sit there, and then you crawl forward for another. It's hunting games. It's just it's mill sim games. Yeah, that's it. Mill sim games are those games that appease to like people once they get older, because people who don't want the Call of Duty run jump shoot run jump shoot, they want something that they feel like they're still part of a shooter, but they don't have to like have the high skills that everyone seems to have.
Well, and so you mentioned hunting games too, right? So those fall under simulation, and I know they still make them. I have not followed them for years, but like I think it was Deer Hunter 4 or something was the last one that I played, which was years ago. But and I have family that hunts but I've never actually done it myself.
I do as well.
Right. So okay, so perfect question for you then. Do you feel as though those kind of games, I mean, they target your interests, but is that something that you think targets an age range that you're falling into now and will continue to fall into? Because I know that if you look a generation back, there was a significant gap. I mean, I was born in 1984, 40 years old. I am well, you are as well. The generation that we grew up without the internet at home, but the internet became a part of our lives at an age where we were old enough to like sort of understand what was happening, and gaming and everything else. I remember when the Nintendo came to the United States, right? So like gaming became a core part of our generation. Before that, there's a separation. My parents could give two flying fucks about video games, and my mother still calls everything Nintendo, right? Like it's not something that's in her mind, nor will it ever be. But do you think that you will eventually reach a point where you're like that, or you'll just change the type and move into a different, like he was saying, like a different genre of game that kind of matches the interest that you currently have, or that the experience that you're looking for?
I don't know, because I don't like. I literally have it's Hunter Call of the Wild. I have the game. My kids play the shit out of it. I don't like it.
What's wrong with it?
To me, and here's the actual hunting side of me. Here's the outside of gaming world that hits to me. It teaches unethical hunting, and I don't like it. It's a simulator, but you can literally run around and shoot the shit out of everything and not claim nothing, and it's okay. Well, in the real life of hunting stuff, which is what I put it to, that is bullshit. I see you do that on the mountain, I will put one in you myself. It's bullshit. And I literally will get mad at my kids over that. My son does that all the time. He'll shoot with something over here, and he's like, "Oh, but there's this over here," and do all this. And I'm like, "Dude, you got to go get your shit first." He's like, "No, I'll get to it in a minute." And he will literally forget where he shot stuff. And I'm like, Jesus. And so stuff like that. I mean, yes, I get the fact of it. It's simulating stuff like that, but realistics for me pisses me off.
So do you think that they're kind of blurring the line between simulation and arcade gameplay in an interest to, in a goal to interest a different audience, right? Because he's looking for more action, right?
Salty,
that's exactly what he's looking for.
Oh, okay. You're headed out. You guys are going to hike, right?
Because we're meeting the people at 10. So
all right. So let's wrap up then. I know we could talk about this a lot more. Any final thoughts about like where you think gaming currently is versus where you think it's going, and are we doomed as a gaming community? And then we'll wrap up.
I'll tell you what, I'll end that real quick. I'll start that. I play Hunt Showdown. You take it from me, I'll be pissed. And I probably won't play more games. So that's how I feel.
I don't think there's anything different. I just think we're getting older. That's just it.
Okay.
My preference for games is going to change. Believe me, 10 years from now, I probably won't be playing Hunt. I'll probably be playing mill sims really deep. I don't know.
Right. And so my thoughts on the same thing. Well, Lydia, do you have any closing
she's not
thoughts on
here
it?
because she's getting no. She's already.
Oh, okay. So basically, yeah, I mean, I kind of feel the same way. I don't think there will be a day where I stop playing games entirely. I think just the games that I play will evolve into more specialized interests for what I'm into and a less of a competitive nature because again, like I've said, I think we're moving in a direction where I'm not going to be able to keep up anymore. I can barely keep up now. Shit. So I think, but I don't think gaming's going anywhere, at least for my age group, because again, I think the world that we were brought up in, it's just part of who we are now. For the people that are interested, and it's not everybody. And I think each generation later, they're almost, I think the saturation level of gamers is much higher. I don't know if you've noticed that. Um, but yeah, so I think we'll end it there. Um, I think the plan is to do this once a month, hopefully. So I'm thinking another one in November and December, and we'll see how those go. Again, maybe no more than an hour and 15 minutes runtime, and then single topic or branching topics from that one. But
All right, I am gonna go.
yeah,
You
thanks
guys have a good
everybody
one.
for being here.
I'll be back in like 2.5 hours if you guys are still on. You probably will
Okay,
be.
yeah, I am gonna end stream and then I'm gonna go live again when I switch over to Hunt. But yeah,
I'm gonna do the same thing.
now I'm looking at myself because Redbeard or because Broke left, so now it's changing the. All right, let me let me just switch.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Let me
Appreciate
switch
it.
to full cam. All right.
And I'll be back for Hunt here shortly.
Yep, I'll be back too. Thank you guys for being here.